The night air of Rome carried the weight of secrets, thick and fragrant with the bloom of night-briar roses that climbed the ancient stone walls of the Villa Rossetti. Elara had memorized every curve of this path over the past 4 months, each stone worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, each shadow that pooled beneath the cypress trees like spilled ink. She knew the way the moonlight would catch the fountain in the center of the garden, turning the cascading water into liquid silver, and she knew exactly where he would be waiting for her. Her heels made soft sounds against the cobblestones, a rhythm she matched to the pounding of her heart. This was forbidden, every moment of it, and that knowledge only made the sweetness of it more acute. She was a woman who had spent her entire life within the boundaries others had drawn for her, and here, in this stolen time, she had finally learned what it meant to breathe freely. The Villa Rossetti had been in the Moretti family for generations, a fortress of old money and older power. Elara had grown up in its shadow, the daughter of a man who served the family with unwavering loyalty. She had watched the Moretti brothers from a distance all her life, seen them at family gatherings and formal events, always aware of their presence like a storm gathering on the horizon. But it was only 4 months ago that Luca Moretti had truly seen her. She remembered the moment with painful clarity. It had been at her father's funeral, a day of gray skies and heavier hearts. She had been standing alone by the grave, the weight of her grief pressing down on her shoulders like a physical thing, when a hand had touched her elbow. She had turned to find Luca looking down at her, his eyes the color of aged whiskey, warm with an understanding that had made her tears threaten to spill over. "I'm sorry for your loss," he had said, his voice soft as velvet. "Your father was a good man. He served my family with honor." She had nodded, unable to speak, and he had stayed beside her through the rest of the service. Not with empty words of comfort, but with a presence that had somehow made the weight of her sorrow bearable. He had walked her to her car at the end, and when he had pressed a card into her hand with his private number, she had felt something shift in the careful architecture of her life. That had been the beginning of their secret. The clandestine meetings in cafes on the other side of the city, the whispered conversations on the phone when the rest of the world was asleep, the way he looked at her as if she were the only woman in existence. He was gentle in a way that seemed impossible for a man who carried the weight of his family's empire on his shoulders. He spoke of art and poetry, of the beauty he saw in the world despite the darkness that surrounded him. Luca Moretti was the eldest son, the heir to a kingdom built on blood and influence. But with her, he was just a man who made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. He had promised her a future, a way out of the shadows she had always known. He had promised to take her away from all of it, to a place where his family's name meant nothing and they could simply exist together. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, he had told her, he would have news. Something that would change everything. The garden opened before her, a sanctuary of carefully cultivated beauty. The fountain whispered in the center, its waters catching the moonlight in 1,000 tiny diamonds. Elara paused at the edge of the pool, her reflection rippling in the disturbed surface. She looked like a woman possessed by hope, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes bright with anticipation. A movement in the shadows of the colonnade caught her attention, and her heart leaped in her chest. He was here. She could see the silhouette of a man, tall and broad-shouldered, leaning against one of the ancient marble pillars. The familiar shape of him made her breath catch. "Luca," she breathed, taking a step forward. But something stopped her. Something in the way he stood, the tension in his shoulders, the set of his head. It was wrong, all wrong. The Luca she knew moved with a gentle grace, like a man who had never needed to prove his strength to anyone. This man carried himself like a predator waiting to strike. "Luca," she repeated, uncertainty creeping into her voice. He stepped forward into the moonlight, and for a moment, her heart stopped completely. It was Luca's face, Luca's body, Luca's way of tilting his head just slightly to one side. But the eyes that met hers were wrong. Where Luca's eyes held warmth and understanding, these eyes were cold, calculating, like chips of obsidian that had never known the touch of light. "Elara," he said, and even his voice was wrong. It was deeper, rougher, as if he had swallowed gravel and smoke. I've been waiting for you. You. She faltered, taking an involuntary step backward. You're not Luca. A smile curved his lips, but it held no warmth. It was the smile of a wolf who had finally cornered its prey. No, he agreed. I'm not. I'm Enzo. The name hit her like a physical blow. Enzo Moretti. The younger twin. The one who lived in the shadows, who handled the family's less savory affairs. The one her father had always warned her to stay away from. But how could she have confused them? They were identical, mirror images of each other, but surely she should have known. Surely she should have seen the difference in the eyes, in the way he moved, in the darkness that clung to him like a second skin. Where is Luca? She demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. He said he would meet me here. Luca has been delayed, Enzo said, taking a step closer to her. She could smell him now, leather and smoke and something else, something sharp that made her instincts scream danger. He sent me in his place. I don't believe you. She was backing away now, her heels catching on the cobblestones. Luca would never send you to meet me. He knows how I feel about you. How do you feel about me, Elara? He was still advancing, his movements unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world. You've never given me the chance to find out. Stay away from me. Her voice came out as a whisper, but it held the steel of desperation. I don't want anything to do with you. You may not have a choice. He reached out and caught her wrist, his grip like iron. My brother has been keeping secrets from me, Elara. Secrets about you. She tried to pull away, but he was too strong. His fingers dug into her flesh, not enough to bruise, but enough to remind her of the power he held. She could feel the calluses on his palms, the hands of a man who had spent his life with weapons. Let me go, she said through gritted teeth. You have no right to touch me. I have every right. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but it sent a chill down her spine. You are my brother's mistress, are you not? That makes you family property. I am not property, she spat, her fear crystallizing into anger. And I am not your brother's mistress. I am his future wife. Something flickered in Enzo's eyes at her words. Surprise? Anger? It was gone too quickly for her to read. Is that what he told you? That he would marry you? He laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. My brother is a romantic. He always was. He sees the world through rose-colored glasses while the rest of us live in reality. Let me go, she repeated, putting all the force of her fury into the words. I will scream. I will wake the entire household. Scream if you like. He shrugged, utterly unconcerned. This is my house. My family has owned it for generations. Do you think anyone here would question me? Do you think they would choose your word over mine? The truth of his words hit her like a wave of ice water. She was in his territory, surrounded by his people, cut off from any help. The servants would not intervene, and Luca was not here to protect her. She was utterly alone with a man who had a reputation for making people disappear. Please, she whispered, hating herself for the plea in her voice. Please, let me go. Something shifted in his expression. The hardness in his eyes seemed to soften, just a fraction, and for a moment she saw something else there. Something that looked almost like pain. Your hands are cold, he observed, his thumb stroking the inside of her wrist. You've been waiting out here for too long. You should have waited inside. The door was locked, she said, bewildered by the sudden change in his demeanor. I unlocked it. He released her wrist, stepping back to give her space. Luca gave me the key. He said you would be coming, that you were important to him. He paused, studying her face as if searching for something. I wanted to see for myself what kind of woman would inspire such devotion in my brother. And what have you decided? She asked the question before she could stop herself, her voice steadier than she felt. I haven't decided anything yet. He moved away from her, walking toward the fountain. I need you to understand something, Elara. This family is not what you think it is. My brother is not what he seems. And if you become a part of this world, you will be bound to it forever. I love Luca, she said, the words coming out stronger than she intended. I love him, and he loves me. Nothing else matters. Enzo turned back to face her, and in the moonlight, she could see the full force of his scrutiny. He was studying her the way a jeweler studies a flawed diamond, looking for the cracks that would make it shatter. Love, he repeated, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. You believe in love, Elara. You believe it can save you from this life. I believe it can save us both, she said quietly. A strange sound escaped his throat, halfway between a laugh and a sob. You are either the bravest woman I have ever met or the most foolish. Perhaps both. He moved toward her again, but this time his steps were slower, less predatory. I want to show you something. I don't want to see anything you have to show me, she said, backing away. It's not about me. His voice was surprisingly gentle. It's about Luca. About what he is really asking you to become part of. He gestured toward the house, toward a set of doors she hadn't noticed before. They were set into the garden wall, almost invisible behind a cascade of climbing roses. What's in there? She asked, her curiosity warring with her fear. Proof, he said simply. Proof of what I told you. You can choose to believe me or not, but if you are going to marry my brother, you deserve to know the truth. She hesitated. Every instinct told her to run, to get away from this dangerous man and his impossible promises. But another part of her, the part that had always wanted more from life, that had always wanted to understand the darkness that surrounded her father's world, urged her to stay. Show me, she heard herself say. He led her to the hidden door, producing a key from his pocket. The lock turned with a soft click, and he pushed the door open to reveal a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. After you, he said, gesturing toward the stairs. She hesitated at the threshold, the darkness seeming to breathe up at her. I don't trust you. I wouldn't expect you to, he replied. But you don't have to trust me to see the truth. You only have to have the courage to look. She took a deep breath and descended into the darkness. The stairs wound down farther than she expected, their walls damp with moisture. The air grew cooler as she descended, and she could smell something familiar, something that tugged at the edges of her memory. It took her a moment to recognize it, the scent of old paper and leather, the smell of a library. At the bottom of the stairs, a door stood open, revealing a room that made her gasp. It was a library, but unlike any she had ever seen. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, stuffed with books and scrolls and documents of every description. The room was circular, with a domed ceiling painted with constellations that glowed softly in the dim light from a chandelier that looked like it belonged in a cathedral. Welcome to the Moretti family archives, Enzo said, coming to stand beside her. Everything you could ever want to know about my family is in this room. The good, the bad, and the truly ugly. What is this place? She breathed, her eyes sweeping across the shelves. This is where we keep our history. Our secrets. The things we can't afford to have anyone else know. He walked over to a table in the center of the room and picked up a leather-bound book. This is what I wanted to show you. He held it out to her, and she took it reluctantly. The leather was worn smooth, the pages yellowed with age. She opened it to the first page and saw a family tree, the names of Morettas stretching back for generations. What am I looking at? She asked. Turn to the page marked with the red ribbon, he instructed. She did as he said, and her blood ran cold. There, in the middle of the page, was a name she recognized, her father's. And beside it, in careful script, were the words, loyalty oath sworn to the family. Service rendered in exchange for protection and anonymity. I don't understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My father was just an accountant. He worked for your family as a financial advisor. That's what he told you, Enzo said softly. But it wasn't the truth. Your father was more than an accountant. He was an enforcer. One of the best my family ever had. He did things for us that would make your blood run cold. No. She shook her head, refusing to believe. He was a good man. He was kind and gentle. He never hurt anyone. He was good at hiding it, Enzo agreed. He had to be, especially after you were born. He wanted to protect you from this world, so he lied to you. He gave up his life of violence to raise you in peace. How do you know this? She looked up at him, her vision blurring with tears. How do you know any of this is true? Because I was there, he said quietly. I was the one who gave him the choice. I told him he could leave the family's darker business and focus on legitimate finances if he agreed to do one last job. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion. The job was to kill a man who was threatening my brother's safety. Your father succeeded, but he was wounded in the process. That wound eventually led to his illness, the one that took his life. The book slipped from her fingers, landing on the table with a heavy thud. She felt the world tilting around her, the carefully constructed reality of her life crumbling to dust. Luca knew, she said, her voice hollow. He knew all of this. He knew, Enzo confirmed. But he didn't tell you because he was afraid you would run. He was afraid you would hate him for what his family made your father do. I do hate him, she said, the words tearing themselves from her throat. I hate all of you. You should hate us, Enzo agreed. We deserve your hate. But before you decide to walk away from all of this, I need to tell you one more thing. What? She looked up at him, her eyes red-rimmed but fierce. What else could you possibly have to tell me? Your father's last wish was that his daughter would be protected, Enzo said softly. He made my brother promise to look after you. That promise is the only reason Luca started seeing you in the first place. It was duty, Elara. Not love. The world shattered around her. All the stolen moments, all the whispered promises, all the dreams she had built on the foundation of Luca's gentle words, they were all lies. He had never loved her. He had only been fulfilling a promise made to a dying man. There's more, Enzo continued, his voice relentless. The reason Luca isn't here tonight is because he's trying to find a way out. Not for you, but for himself. He's been making deals behind our father's back, trying to secure a position that will allow him to leave the family without repercussions. He's been using you as a cover, pretending to be in love so that no one suspects what he's really doing. Stop, she whispered, pressing her hands to her ears. Please, stop. I can't stop. He moved toward her, his hands reaching out to grasp her wrists and gently pull her hands away from her ears. You need to hear this, Elara. You need to understand what kind of man you've been giving your heart to. He's not like that, she protested weakly. He's not like you. He's good and gentle and he loves me. I know he does. He might love you, Enzo conceded. I can't speak to what's in his heart. But I can speak to what's in his head, and right now, all he's thinking about is escape. He's willing to sacrifice anyone and anything to get what he wants. Including you. How do you know this? She demanded, pulling away from him. How can you be so sure? Because he told me himself. Enzo's voice was flat, emotionless. He came to me 2 days ago and asked for my help. He told me he was going to leave Rome, that he was taking someone with him, but he wouldn't tell me who. I assumed it was you. But I didn't want to believe that my brother would be so foolish as to try to take another man's woman. What are you talking about? Her confusion was genuine. There's no other man. It's just me. Is it? He raised an eyebrow. My brother has a mistress in Milan. A married woman with powerful connections. He's been seeing her for years, long before he started courting you. No. She shook her head violently. That's not true. He wouldn't do that. He didn't tell you about her either. Enzo's voice held a note of genuine surprise. I thought you must have known. It's no secret in the family. Everyone knows about his Milanese lover. She turned away from him, unable to bear the sight of his face any longer. Her mind was reeling, trying to process all the information he had just thrown at her. It couldn't be true. It was all lies, designed to make her doubt Luca, to drive her into Enzo's arms for some nefarious purpose. But a small voice in her head whispered, what if it's true? What if everything he's saying is real? I need to leave, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos inside her. I need to go home and think about all of this. You can't leave. His voice was firm. It's past midnight, and the gates are locked. You'll have to stay until morning. No. She turned back to face him, her eyes blazing. You can't keep me here against my will. I'm not keeping you against your will. He held up his hands in a placating gesture. I'm keeping you safe. The streets of Rome are not safe for a woman alone at this hour, especially not a woman who's been seen with a Moretti. You know how things work in this city. She did know. She had grown up in this world, had seen the way the families operated. A woman who belonged to one family was never safe in the territory of another. And if she was seen leaving the Moretti villa in the middle of the night, questions would be asked. Questions that could have deadly answers. Fine, she said through clenched teeth. I'll stay. But I want my own room, and I want to be left alone. Of course. He gestured toward the stairs. I'll show you to the guest wing. You'll have your own suite, and no one will disturb you. She followed him up the stairs, her mind churning with everything she had learned. She felt like she was walking through a dream, disconnected from her own body. How could she have been so blind? How could she have trusted Luca so completely? Enzo led her through the garden and into the main house, past rooms she had only ever seen from the outside. The villa was even more magnificent up close, its walls covered in tapestries and paintings that must have been worth fortunes. But she barely noticed any of it. Here, Enzo said, stopping in front of a door at the end of a long hallway. This will be your room. There's a bathroom adjoining, and I'll have someone bring you fresh clothes. Thank you, she said stiffly, not meeting his eyes. Ilara. His voice was soft, almost tender. I know this is difficult. I know you must hate me for telling you all of this. But I couldn't let you go on believing in a lie. You deserve better than that. Do I? She finally looked up at him, and she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. It was the same look she had seen in Luca's eyes at the funeral, the look of a man who understood pain and wanted to ease it. Everyone deserves the truth, he said quietly. Even when it hurts. She opened the door to her room and stepped inside, turning back to face him before she closed it. What do you want from me, Enzo? Why are you doing all of this? He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I want you to survive, he said at last. I want you to be strong enough to face whatever comes next. And I want you to know that no matter what happens, you will always have a protector in this family. Are you offering to be my protector? She couldn't keep the skepticism out of her voice. I'm offering to be your ally, he corrected. Your partner in this dance. You have to understand, Ilara, that my family is at war. Not just with our enemies, but with each other. The Moretti brothers are tearing each other apart, and women like you are always the first to suffer for it. What do you mean? She asked. My brother wants to leave the family, which means he's a traitor. My father wants to keep him here, which means he's a tyrant. And I'm caught in the middle, trying to hold everything together. He ran a hand through his hair in a gesture of exhaustion. You're a pawn in this game, Ilara. You're being used by both sides. But I can help you protect yourself. How? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. By telling you the truth, he said simply. By giving you the tools you need to survive. By being someone you can trust. Trust, she repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. How can I trust anyone after everything I've learned tonight? You can trust me because I have nothing to gain from lying to you, he said. If I wanted to hurt you, I could have done it already. If I wanted to use you, I could have kept the truth hidden and continued to manipulate you. But I didn't. I chose to tell you the truth because I believe you deserve to know. She studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. But all she saw was exhaustion and something that looked almost like sincerity. It was impossible to believe that this man, who was known throughout the city as a ruthless enforcer, could be capable of kindness. And yet. Fine, she said at last. I'll trust you. But only for tonight. Tomorrow, I'll decide what to do next. Tomorrow is all I ask, he said, and there was something in his voice that sounded almost like relief. She closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding in her chest. What had just happened? How had she gone from meeting the man she loved to being trapped in the home of his dangerous twin? And why did she feel like she had just made a deal with the devil? She moved through the room on autopilot, not really seeing the luxurious furnishings. Her mind was still spinning with everything Enzo had told her. The truth about her father, the truth about Luca's intentions, the truth about the mistress in Milan. It was all too much to process. She found the bathroom, a marble paradise with a sunken tub that could have comfortably held 6 people. She filled it with hot water and sank into its depths, letting the heat seep into her aching muscles. She stayed there until the water grew cold, trying to wash away the feeling of contamination that had settled over her like a shroud. When she emerged, wrapped in a thick robe that had been provided for her, she found a tray of food on the nightstand. Simple things: bread, cheese, fruit, a bottle of water. The kindness of it made her eyes sting with tears. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing. When she was finished, she climbed into the bed, the sheets soft as silk against her skin. But sleep refused to come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Enzo's face, heard his voice telling her the truth she had never wanted to hear. She tossed and turned for hours, her mind refusing to quiet. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up on sleep entirely. She rose from the bed and padded across the room to the window, looking out at the moonlit garden below. The garden was beautiful in the darkness, its paths silver with moonlight, its flowers swaying gently in the night breeze. But even the beauty of the garden couldn't ease the ache in her chest. She had come here tonight with a heart full of hope, and she was leaving with nothing but ashes. Movement caught her eye, and she saw a figure walking through the garden. It was Enzo, she realized, his tall frame unmistakable even from a distance. He was walking slowly, his head bowed, looking for all the world like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. She watched him for a long time, studying the way he moved. There was something different about him tonight, something she hadn't noticed before. The hardness that usually defined him seemed to have softened, replaced by a vulnerability that made him look almost approachable. He stopped at the fountain, the same fountain where she had first mistaken him for Luca. He stood there for a long moment, staring into its waters, and she could have sworn she saw him shiver despite the warmth of the night. What was his story? What had made him into the man he was today? She had always thought of him as a monster, a shadow that existed only to do the family's dirty work. But tonight, she had seen glimpses of something else. A man who was trapped in a life he hadn't chosen, carrying burdens he didn't want. She watched him until he finally turned and walked back toward the house. Only then did she return to her bed, and this time, sleep finally came. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and the world looked different. The room that had seemed like a prison the night before now felt almost welcoming, its cream-colored walls and antique furniture creating an atmosphere of quiet luxury. She rose and dressed in the clothes that had been left for her, a simple dress that fit perfectly. She wondered who had chosen it, whether it had been Enzo or one of the servants. The thought of Enzo picking out clothes for her made something flutter in her chest, and she pushed the feeling away. There was a knock at the door, and she opened it to find Enzo standing there. He looked like he hadn't slept, dark circles under his eyes and a weariness in his posture that made him seem older than his years. "Good morning," he said. "I trust you slept well." "Not really," she admitted. "But I don't suppose that matters." "It matters to me," he said, surprising her. "I've had breakfast prepared. I thought we could talk more, if you're willing." She hesitated, her instincts warring with her curiosity. Part of her wanted to leave this place and never look back, to pretend that none of last night had happened. But another part of her needed to understand, needed to know the full truth of what she had become entangled in. "I'll join you," she said at last. He led her to a small dining room, intimate and cozy, with a table set for two. The breakfast spread was impressive, fresh pastries, fruit, eggs, cheese, coffee. But she couldn't bring herself to eat. "I know this is difficult," Enzo said, taking a seat across from her. "I know you probably want to leave and never see me again. But I need you to hear me out." "I'm listening," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "The situation is more complicated than I told you last night," he began. "Luca isn't just planning to leave the family. He's planning to take something valuable with him. Something my father will kill to keep." "What?" she asked. "Information," Enzo said. "Our family's most closely guarded secrets. He's going to sell them to our enemies in exchange for protection and a new identity." "But why?" She couldn't believe it. Luca, gentle Luca, capable of such betrayal. Why would he do that? "Because he's tired of living in his father's shadow," Enzo said. "He's tired of being controlled, tired of having to follow orders that go against everything he believes in. He wants freedom, and he's willing to destroy everything his father has built to get it." "And what do you want?" she asked, meeting his eyes. "Where do you fit into all of this?" He leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away. "I want to survive," he said at last. "I want to protect the things that matter to me. And I want to make sure that you survive too." "Why do you care about my survival?" she pressed. "Because you're innocent in all of this," he said simply. "You never asked to be dragged into our family's drama. And my father will not hesitate to use you as leverage against Luca. He will hurt you if it serves his purposes, and I can't let that happen." "So what do you propose?" she asked. "I propose that we work together," he said. "You'll stay here, under my protection. I'll keep you safe from my father's schemes and from the fallout of Luca's betrayal. And when this is all over, I'll help you start a new life. Somewhere far away from all of this." "And what do you get out of this arrangement?" she asked. He was quiet for a long moment. "I get the satisfaction of knowing that I saved someone worth saving," he said at last. "I get to prove to myself that I'm not the monster everyone thinks I am." She studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. But all she saw was sincerity, and something else. Something that looked almost like loneliness. "I'll stay," she said at last. "But only until I can figure out what to do next." "That's all I ask," he said, and she could have sworn she saw relief flicker across his features. They ate the rest of their breakfast in silence, the weight of everything that had been said hanging between them. But there was something new in the air, something that hadn't been there the night before. A tentative trust, a fragile connection that had been forged in the crucible of shared secrets. When they finished, Enzo stood and offered her his hand. She took it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. It was the same hand that had gripped her wrist the night before, but now it felt different. It felt like an anchor, pulling her towards something she didn't understand but couldn't resist. "Welcome to the Moretti family," he said, and there was a hint of dark humor in his voice. "I hope you'll survive the experience." She laughed, a short, humorless sound. "I hope so too." But as she looked into his eyes, she felt something shift within her. Something that had nothing to do with fear or suspicion and everything to do with the spark of something new. Something that might have been the beginning of understanding. She looked away, afraid of what she might see in his eyes if she kept looking. But she didn't pull her hand away. She held on, anchoring herself to the one person in this world who had offered her the truth, even when it hurt. And in that moment, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The woman who had entered this garden with a heart full of hope was gone, replaced by someone harder, someone who had learned to see the shadows that lurked beneath the surface of every promise. But she was still standing. She was still fighting. And no matter what came next, she would not be defeated. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the room. Elara looked at Enzo, and for the first time, she saw him not as a monster, but as a man. Flawed and broken and desperately trying to hold on to something worth saving. Maybe that something was her. Or maybe it was just a fragment of his own humanity, the part of him that hadn't been completely corrupted by the life he had been forced to live. Either way, she was in it now. And there was no going back. The days that followed Elara's arrival at the Villa Rossetti blurred together into a haze of confusion and strange new routines. She woke each morning to the soft light filtering through antique lace curtains, the scent of fresh flowers that appeared in her room without explanation, and the weight of a truth that pressed down on her chest like a physical thing. The villa was a world unto itself, a fortress of old money and older secrets. Every corridor she walked held centuries of history, every painting on the wall seemed to watch her with knowing eyes. She was a stranger in this place, an intruder who had been given a room but not a home. And yet, she found herself growing accustomed to the rhythm of the house. The servants moved with silent efficiency, anticipating her needs before she could voice them. Meals appeared at regular intervals, carefully prepared and beautifully presented. Fresh clothes were delivered to her room each morning, chosen with a taste that spoke of an intimate understanding of her preferences. She knew, without being told, that these small kindnesses came from Enzo. He was a ghost in his own house, appearing at odd hours, his presence felt even when he was not seen. She would catch glimpses of him in the garden, walking with his head bowed, or through the windows of his study, bent over papers that seemed to multiply like living things. But he never sought her out. He gave her space, time to process everything she had learned. It was a courtesy she hadn't expected from a man with his reputation, and it made her feel something she couldn't quite name. The days stretched into a week, then two. Elara found herself falling into a strange sort of routine. She would walk in the garden each morning, tracing the same paths she had walked that fateful night. She would read in the library, devouring books that had been collected over generations. She would sit by the fountain and watch the water dance, her mind drifting to thoughts she didn't want to examine too closely. And always, in the back of her mind, was the question, what had happened to Luca? She had heard nothing from him since that night. No messages, no phone calls, no desperate attempts to explain himself. It was as if he had vanished from the face of the earth, leaving only the echo of his lies behind. She told herself she didn't care. She told herself that the man she had loved was a fiction, a carefully constructed illusion designed to manipulate her. But the heart was not so easily convinced, and there were nights when she woke from dreams of his gentle hands and soft words, her cheeks wet with tears. It was on one such night, when sleep refused to come and the weight of her solitude pressed down on her like a physical thing, that she found herself wandering the corridors of the villa. The house was silent, the servants asleep in their quarters, the only light coming from the moon that streamed through the windows. She walked without purpose, her bare feet silent on the cold marble floors. She passed rooms she had never seen, doors that stood slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of another world. A world of wealth and power and secrets that would never be told. A soft light caught her eye, spilling from beneath a door at the end of a corridor she had never explored. She moved toward it, drawn by a curiosity she couldn't quite explain. The door was slightly open, and she could hear the sound of papers rustling, the soft murmur of a voice speaking in Italian. She pushed the door open just wide enough to see inside. It was Enzo's study, she realized. The room was a chaos of books and papers, maps spread across every surface, a laptop glowing on the desk. And there, standing by the window with his back to her, was Enzo himself. He was on the phone, his voice low and urgent. She couldn't understand the words, but she could feel the tension in his posture, the weight of whatever conversation he was having. He was speaking in rapid Italian, the language she had grown up hearing but had never fully mastered. He turned suddenly, and his eyes met hers. For a moment, neither of them moved. The phone was still pressed to his ear, his expression unreadable. Then he said something into the phone, a single word that sounded like an order, and ended the call. Ilara. He said her name like a question, like he wasn't sure she was real. What are you doing here? I couldn't sleep, she said, stepping into the room. I was walking and I saw the light. You should be resting, he said, but there was no reproach in his voice. Only weariness. It's late. So are you. She moved closer, her eyes sweeping across the chaos of his desk. What are you working on? Nothing that should concern you. He moved to block her view, but not quickly enough. She had already seen the photographs spread across the surface of the desk. Photographs of her, taken from a distance. Photographs of her with Luca, their heads bent together in intimate conversation. What is this? She demanded, her voice sharp. Why do you have pictures of me? I'm trying to protect you, he said, his voice carefully controlled. The men who are after my brother will try to find you. They'll use you to get to him. I need to know where you've been, who you've seen, so I can keep you safe. By spying on me? She felt a cold fury building in her chest. By invading my privacy? By doing whatever it takes to keep you alive, he said, his voice hardening. You don't understand the world you've stumbled into, Ilara. You think this is about privacy and boundaries, but it's not. It's about survival. And the people who are looking for you won't care about your feelings. She wanted to argue, but the truth of his words stopped her. She had seen the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of this world. She had grown up in its shadow. She knew what men like the Morettas were capable of. I hate this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I hate everything about this. I hate being watched, being controlled, being treated like a possession. I know. His voice softened. I know you do. And I'm sorry. Truly sorry. But I can't change the way things are. I can only try to make sure you survive. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the exhaustion that lined his face. The shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders curved inward as if carrying a weight too heavy to bear. Are you okay? She asked, the question surprising her as much as it seemed to surprise him. I'm fine. He turned away, busying himself with the papers on his desk. I have a lot of work to do. You should go back to bed. I don't want to go back to bed. She moved closer to him, close enough to see the tension in his shoulders. I want to know what's going on. I'm tired of being kept in the dark. He sighed, a sound of pure exhaustion. You don't want to know, Ilara. Trust me. The things I know would keep you awake for the rest of your life. Then let them keep me awake. She reached out and touched his arm, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath her fingers. I'm not a child. I can handle the truth. He looked at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Pain, yes, and exhaustion, but something else too. Something that looked almost like fear. You're going to hate me, he said quietly. When you know everything, you're going to hate me. I already hate you, she said, but there was no venom in her voice. What's one more reason? He laughed, a short, humorless sound. Fair enough. He moved to the window, looking out at the moonlit garden. My brother didn't just betray the family. He betrayed our father in a way that can never be forgiven. He stole something, something that our father values more than his own life. What did he steal? Enzo was silent for a long moment. A ledger, he said at last. A record of every transaction this family has ever made. Every bribe, every payment, every crime. It's the only proof of our father's empire, and without it, he's vulnerable. Luca took the ledger. I think so, Enzo said. It's been missing for weeks. My father has been tearing the city apart looking for it. And if he finds out that Luca has it, he'll kill him. He'll kill anyone who gets in his way. But you're his son, she said. Surely he wouldn't. You don't know my father, Enzo said, his voice flat. He's not like other men. He doesn't see family the way normal people do. He sees assets. Tools. Things to be used and discarded when they're no longer useful. She moved to stand beside him, looking out at the same garden. The moonlight painted everything silver and shadow, turning the familiar landscape into something strange and beautiful. You're afraid of him, she said softly. You're afraid of your own father. Yes, he said, and there was no shame in his admission. I'm terrified of him. I've been terrified of him my whole life. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of living in fear. So why don't you leave, she asked. Why don't you just walk away? Because it's not that simple. He turned to look at her, and there was something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. I've done things, Elara. Terrible things. Things I can never take back. If I leave, I'll be hunted. And if I'm caught, I'll be killed. There's no escape for men like me. There's always escape, she said softly. You just have to be brave enough to take it. He laughed again, but this time there was something sad in the sound. You think I'm not brave? I've faced death more times than I can count. I've looked into the eyes of men who wanted to kill me and felt nothing. But leaving this life requires a different kind of courage. A courage I'm not sure I have. She reached out and took his hand, the same hand that had gripped her wrist so firmly on the night they met. This time, it felt different. It felt like a connection, a thread of understanding between two people who had been forced into lives they didn't choose. I think you're braver than you know, she said. I think you've been brave for so long that you don't even realize it anymore. He looked at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her heart ache. Loneliness, she realized. An emptiness that had been there so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to be anything else. I don't deserve your kindness, he said, his voice rough. After everything my family has done to you, I don't deserve anything from you. I'm not being kind, she said. I'm being honest. I see you, Enzo. I see the man behind the monster. And I don't think you're as bad as you want people to believe. He pulled his hand away, stepping back from her as if she had burned him. You don't know what you're talking about. You've only seen the surface, the mask I present to the world. You don't know the things I've done. Then tell me, she said. Tell me everything. I won't run. I won't judge you. I just want to understand. He was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. Then he nodded, a small, defeated gesture. Sit down, he said. This is going to take a while. She took a seat on the leather sofa that dominated one corner of the room, and he sat across from her. The distance between them felt immense, a chasm that could only be bridged by truth. When I was 16, he began, my father sent me to do my first job. It was supposed to be simple, just a message to a man who had crossed the family. But the man was drunk, and he didn't take the warning seriously. He attacked me, and I defended myself. I killed him. He paused, looking down at his hands. I didn't mean to. It was an accident, a moment of panic. But my father was proud of me. He said I had shown my true nature, that I was finally becoming the son he had always wanted. And from that day on, I became his weapon. His instrument of vengeance. She sat in silence, letting his words wash over her. It was a story she had heard before, the story of a boy forced to become a killer. But hearing it from his lips made it real in a way it had never been before. The things I've done since then, he continued, his voice dropping even lower. The men I've killed, the families I've destroyed, the lives I've ruined. You can't imagine the weight of it, Elara. You can't imagine what it's like to carry that kind of guilt. Then why do you keep doing it, she asked. Why don't you just refuse? Because refusal isn't an option, he said, his voice bitter. In this family, you do what you're told or you face the consequences. I've seen what happens to people who refuse. They disappear. They're never seen again. And I couldn't let that happen to me. But you could leave, she pressed. You could find a way out. Escape isn't that simple, he said. I have no skills, no education beyond what my father deemed useful. I know how to kill, how to manipulate, how to survive in a world of violence. I don't know how to be a normal person. And even if I did, I have enemies everywhere. My father's enemies. My own enemies. The moment I stepped out of this life, I'd be a target. But you would be free, she said softly. Wouldn't that be worth the risk? He looked at her, and there was a hunger in his eyes that made her breath catch. You make it sound so simple, he said. You make it sound like freedom is something I can just reach out and take. But it's not. It's a dream. A fantasy. It's not real. It can be real, she insisted. It can be real if you're brave enough to fight for it. He laughed again, but there was no humor in the sound. You're a strange woman, Elara. You should be afraid of me. You should hate me. Instead, you're trying to give me hope. Maybe I'm not as smart as I think I am, she said, a ghost of a smile playing at her lips. Maybe not. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. But I find myself hoping you're right. I find myself wanting to believe in the things you're saying. Then believe, she said. Believe that there's more to life than this. Believe that you can be more than what your father made you. He was silent for a long moment, his eyes never leaving hers. Then he nodded, a small, tentative gesture. I'll try, he said. I'll try to believe. It was a beginning. A fragile, tentative beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. And as she looked at him, she felt something shift inside her. Something that had nothing to do with fear or suspicion and everything to do with the strange, unexpected connection that had formed between them. The days that followed were different. The wariness that had characterized their relationship began to fade, replaced by a tentative trust that surprised them both. They spent more time together, talking in the garden or in his study, sharing stories of their pasts, their dreams, their fears. She learned that Enzo was a man of contradictions. He was ruthless in business, cold and calculating, but he had a soft spot for the stray animals that wandered onto the villa grounds. He would feed them, care for them, and then chase them away with a harshness that belied the tenderness of his actions. He was a man who had been forced to become a monster, but there was still humanity in him. She could see it in the way he treated his servants, the respect he showed them despite his position. She could see it in the way he spoke of his mother, who had died when he was young, a story that made his voice catch with emotion. She found herself drawn to him in a way she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't the gentle, romantic love she had felt for Luca. It was something deeper, more complicated. A connection that had been forged in the crucible of shared pain and mutual understanding. But the shadow of Luca still hung between them. He was the ghost in the room, the unspoken presence that colored every interaction. And though neither of them mentioned his name, they both knew that he was the reason they had come together in the first place. One evening, Enzo found her in the library, her nose buried in a book she had read a dozen times before. You don't have to hide in here, he said, leaning against the doorframe. The house is big enough for both of us. I'm not hiding, she said, not looking up from her book. I'm reading. Reading the same book you read last week? He moved into the room, taking a seat across from her. You can't fool me, Elara. I know you're avoiding me. I'm not avoiding you. She finally looked up, meeting his eyes. I'm just trying to make sense of everything. Of this world, of this life, of everything that's happened. And are you making sense of it? He asked. No, she admitted. I'm not. The more I learn, the less I understand. That's the nature of this life, he said. The deeper you go, the darker it gets. And the darker it gets, the harder it is to find your way back. I don't want to go back, she said softly. I don't want to be the person I was before. She was so naive, so trusting. She believed in things that weren't real. We all believed in things that weren't real at some point, he said. It's part of growing up. Is that what this is? She asked. Growing up. It feels more like dying. Maybe it's both, he said. Maybe growing up is just a slow death of the person you used to be. She looked at him, really looked, and saw something in his eyes that made her heart ache. It was the same loneliness she had seen in him before, the same emptiness that seemed to be his constant companion. You're sad, she said. You've been sad for a very long time. I have, he agreed. I've been sad for as long as I can remember. But I don't know how to be anything else. It's a part of me now. It doesn't have to be, she said. You can change. You can learn to be happy. I don't know if I can, he admitted. I've been this way for so long that I've forgotten what happiness feels like. I don't know if I'd recognize it if I saw it. She stood up and walked over to him, her movements slow and deliberate. She reached out and took his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. Let me show you, she said softly. Let me show you what it feels like to be happy. He looked at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Hope, she realized. A fragile, tentative hope that she had put there. I don't deserve this, he said, his voice rough. I don't deserve you. I don't care what you deserve, she said. I care about what you need. And right now, I think you need someone to remind you that you're still human. She pulled him to his feet, and then she was in his arms, her head resting against his chest. She could feel his heart beating, a steady rhythm that matched her own. It was the most intimate moment she had shared with anyone, and it was terrifying and beautiful all at once. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. She could feel the tension in his body slowly easing, the rigid lines of his shoulders softening under her touch. Thank you, he whispered into her hair. Thank you for this. She didn't answer. She just held him, letting him feel the warmth of her embrace. It was a small gesture, a moment of connection in a world that seemed determined to tear them apart. But it was enough. It was enough to remind them both that they were still alive, still capable of feeling something beyond the darkness that surrounded them. The moment stretched, endless and beautiful. Then Enzo pulled back, his eyes searching hers. I should let you get some rest, he said, his voice hoarse. It's late. Stay, she said, surprising herself. Stay with me a little longer. He hesitated, then nodded. They sat together on the sofa, not quite touching but close enough to feel each other's warmth. They talked for hours, about nothing and everything, about their dreams and their fears and the strange, unexpected connection that had formed between them. It was past midnight when she finally felt her eyelids growing heavy. She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder, and let herself drift off to sleep. She was aware of him staying still, his arm draped protectively around her, his warmth seeping into her bones. When she woke, the first light of dawn was streaming through the windows. She was alone on the sofa, a blanket carefully tucked around her. She smiled, a small, secret smile, and felt something flutter in her chest. Hope, she realized. It was hope. The days continued to pass, each one bringing them closer together. They spent more time in each other's company, sharing meals and walks and conversations that stretched long into the night. The walls Alara had built around her heart began to crumble, replaced by something new and fragile and terrifying. She found herself looking forward to seeing him, to hearing his voice, to feeling the warmth of his presence. It was a feeling she had never experienced before, a pull that went beyond attraction or desire. It was something deeper, something that had nothing to do with the physical and everything to do with the emotional. But the shadow of Luca still hung over them. And one day, he came back. Elara was in the garden when she heard the commotion. The sound of raised voices, of something crashing, of feet pounding on marble floors. She ran toward the house, her heart pounding in her chest, and burst through the doors to find chaos. Luca was there, his face twisted with fury, a broken vase at his feet. And standing across from him, his expression cold and unreadable, was Enzo. "You lied to her," Luca was shouting. "You told her all those things about me, twisted the truth, made her hate me." "I told her the truth," Enzo said, his voice calm and steady. "Every word I said was true. You had no right." Luca lunged forward, his fist connecting with Enzo's jaw. Enzo staggered back but didn't retaliate. He just stood there, his hands at his sides, taking the blows. "Stop it!" Elara screamed, rushing forward. "Both of you, stop it!" Luca turned to look at her, and there was something desperate in his eyes. "Elara, please. You have to listen to me. He's been lying to you. Everything he told you, it was all lies." "What makes you think I'll believe anything you say?" she demanded. "You lied to me too. You lied to me from the very beginning." "I lied because I had to," he said, his voice pleading. "I was trying to protect you. I was trying to keep you safe." "Safe from what?" she asked. "Safe from the truth. Safe from the fact that you were using me as a cover for your plans." "I wasn't using you," he said. "I love you, Elara. I've always loved you. If you loved me, you would have told me the truth," she said. "You would have been honest with me from the start. Instead, you let me believe in a lie." He opened his mouth to respond, but Enzo stepped forward, wiping the blood from his lip. "It's over, Luca," Enzo said quietly. "You've made your choice. Now you have to live with the consequences." "This isn't over," Luca said, his voice low and dangerous. "This is far from over. And you, brother, will regret the day you crossed me." He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the silent house. Elara stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She had just watched her past walk out the door, and with it, any hope of returning to the person she used to be. "Are you okay?" Enzo asked, stepping toward her. "I'm fine," she said, her voice hollow. I'm trying to process what just happened." "He'll try to come back," Enzo said. "He won't give up that easily." "I know," she said. "But I won't let him in. Not this time." She looked at him, and saw the blood on his lip, the bruise forming on his jaw. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his skin. "He hurt you," she said softly. "I've had worse," he said, turning his head to press a kiss to her palm. "I've had much worse." She pulled her hand away, her heart racing. The gesture had been intimate, more intimate than anything they had shared before. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready for any of it. But as she looked into his eyes, she knew that she was falling. Falling for the one man she should never have trusted. Falling for the one man who had the power to destroy her completely. She walked away from him, her steps slow and measured. She needed time to think, to process, to understand the strange and complicated feelings that were swirling inside her. But no matter how far she walked, she couldn't escape the truth. She was falling in love with Enzo Moretti. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and longing. She tried to stay away from him, to keep her distance, to protect her heart from a man who had already broken it once. But it was impossible. Every time she saw him, every time she heard his voice, her resolve crumbled. He was patient with her, giving her space, but never quite leaving her alone. He would leave small gifts outside her door, a book he thought she might like, a flower he had picked from the garden. He would find excuses to be near her, to talk to her, to be in her presence. And despite everything, she found herself wanting him near. Wanting his voice, his warmth, his presence. It was a need that went beyond logic, beyond reason, beyond everything she had ever known. One evening, she found him in the garden, standing by the fountain where they had first met. The moonlight painted him silver and shadow, making him look like a figure from a dream. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, coming to stand beside him. "Never can," he said. "It's a curse of this life. Nightmares keep me awake." "What do you dream about?" she asked. "The past," he said. "The things I've done. The people I've hurt. It's a parade of ghosts, and they all want something from me." "I know the feeling," she said softly. "I dream about my father. About the lies he told me. About the man I thought he was." He turned to look at her, his eyes searching hers. "We're both haunted," he said. "Both trapped by the past." "Yes," she agreed. "But maybe we don't have to be. Maybe we can find a way to move forward." "How?" he asked. "How do you move forward when the past is always there, holding you back?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But I think it starts with letting go. Letting go of the guilt, the shame, the fear. Letting go of everything that's holding us back." He was silent for a long moment, his eyes never leaving hers. Then he reached out and took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I don't know if I can let go," he said. "But I want to try. For you, I want to try." It was the most honest thing he had ever said to her. And in that moment, she knew that she had made her choice. She was going to let herself fall. She was going to let herself love him. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the lines of his jaw. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch, and she felt something shift inside her. "Trust me," she whispered. "Trust me, and I'll help you find your way out of the darkness." He opened his eyes, and there was something in them that made her breath catch. It was hope, she realized. Fragile and tentative, but real. Hope that she had put there. "I trust you," he said. "I trust you more than I've ever trusted anyone." She pulled him into an embrace, holding him close. And in the silence of the garden, surrounded by moonlight and the scent of night-blooming jasmine, they made a silent pact. They would find their way out of the darkness together. And nothing would ever tear them apart. The days continued to pass, and their bond grew stronger. They spent more time together, sharing their hopes and fears, their dreams and regrets. They were two broken people, finding solace in each other's arms. But the shadow of Luca still hung over them, and the threat of Enzo's father loomed ever closer. They knew that their time was limited, that the peace they had found would not last forever. But for now, they had each other. And that was enough. The night before everything changed, Elara sat in her room, staring out at the moonlit garden. She was thinking about the life she had left behind, the person she used to be. She was thinking about the woman she had become, the woman who had found the courage to love again. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Enzo standing there, his face drawn with exhaustion. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something important." She stepped aside to let him in, her heart pounding in her chest. He walked to the window, his back to her, and was silent for a long moment. "I found out where Luca is," he said at last. "He's in Milan, with his mistress. He's planning to sell the ledger and disappear." "And then what?" she asked. "What happens after he sells it?" "My father will find out," Enzo said. "And when he does, he'll go after Luca. He'll go after anyone who helped him. Including you." "But I didn't help him," she said. "I didn't know anything about it." "It doesn't matter," Enzo said. "My father doesn't care about guilt or innocence. He only cares about the threat. And anyone who was close to Luca is a threat. "So what do we do?" she asked. Enzo turned to face her, and there was a determination in his eyes that she had never seen before. "We leave," he said. "We leave tonight, before my father finds out what Luca has done." "Leave?" she repeated. "Leave to where?" "I have a place," he said. "A safe house in the mountains. No one knows about it. We can stay there until this is over." "And then what?" she asked. "What happens after?" "Then we figure it out," he said. "We figure out what comes next. Together." She looked at him, at the man who had become her anchor in a world of chaos. She thought about everything she was leaving behind, the life she had known, the person she used to be. And she realized that none of it mattered. All that mattered was him. "Okay," she said. "Let's go." He smiled, a real smile, the first she had ever seen on his face. It transformed him, making him look younger, lighter, freer. "I'll get the car," he said. "Be ready in 10 minutes." She nodded, and he left. She moved through the room on autopilot, gathering her belongings. It wasn't much, just a few changes of clothes and the book she had been reading. The rest of it, all the luxury and comfort of the villa, she was leaving behind. She took one last look around the room, then walked out the door. She was leaving this life behind, and she was never coming back. The car was waiting for her in the courtyard, Enzo at the wheel. She climbed in beside him, and they drove off into the night. The road wound through the mountains, the darkness pressing in on all sides. She didn't know where they were going, didn't know what the future held. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. The mountain road wound through darkness like a serpent seeking its prey. Elara sat in the passenger seat of the sleek black car, her fingers gripping the leather upholstery as Enzo navigated the treacherous curves with practiced ease. The headlights cut through the night, illuminating ancient stone walls and twisted olive trees that seemed to reach for them like grasping hands. She had not asked where they were going. She had not asked what would happen when they arrived. She had simply trusted him, this man who had been her enemy and was now her only ally. It was a trust that surprised her, a leap of faith that felt both terrifying and liberating. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the unspoken understanding that had grown between them over the past weeks. They had shared so much already, their pain and their fears, their hopes and their dreams. There was nothing left to hide from each other. But there was something in the air tonight, a tension that went beyond the danger they were fleeing. Something unspoken that hovered between them like a question waiting to be asked. "I never thought I would leave," Enzo said suddenly, his voice low in the darkness. "I always thought I would die in that house, trapped by the life my father built for me." "You're not dying tonight," Elara said firmly. "We're both going to survive this. We have to." "Do we?" He glanced at her, his eyes unreadable. "Sometimes I wonder if survival is worth it. If the life I've lived is worth continuing." "Don't say that." She reached across the console and took his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. "Don't ever say that. You have so much to live for, Enzo. You just haven't found it yet." "Maybe I have," he said softly. "Maybe I've found it, and I'm just afraid to admit it." She looked at him, at the profile of his face illuminated by the dashboard lights. He was so different from the man she had first met, the cold enforcer who had gripped her wrist in the garden. This man was vulnerable, uncertain, searching for something he had never allowed himself to want. "What are you afraid of?" she asked. "Everything," he admitted. "Losing you. Failing you. Being the man my father wanted me to be instead of the man I want to become." "You won't fail me," she said. "You've already shown me who you really are. The man I see now, that's the real Enzo. Not the monster your father created." He squeezed her hand, a gesture of gratitude that spoke louder than words. They drove on in silence, the road unfolding before them like a path to an unknown future. The safe house was nestled in a valley between two peaks, invisible from the road above. It was a small stone cottage, centuries old, with thick walls and shuttered windows that had seen generations of secrets. Enzo parked the car in a hidden garage and led her inside, his movements careful and deliberate. The interior was modest but comfortable, with a fireplace that crackled to life with a flick of his hand. He moved through the space like a man who had been here many times, lighting lamps and drawing curtains, creating a cocoon of warmth against the cold mountain night. "Make yourself at home," he said, gesturing toward the worn leather sofa. "There's food in the kitchen, and the bedroom is through that door. I'll take the sofa." "Enzo." She stopped him with a hand on his arm. "You don't have to do this alone. Whatever comes next, we face it together." He looked at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch. It was the same look she had seen in the garden, the look of a man who was on the verge of saying something he had never said before. "I don't deserve you," he said softly. "I've never deserved anyone. But I'm grateful, Elara. More grateful than you could ever know." "Stop saying that," she said, pulling him into an embrace. "Stop saying you don't deserve happiness. Everyone deserves happiness, Enzo. Everyone." He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. She could feel his heart beating against her chest, a steady rhythm that matched her own. It was the most intimate moment they had shared, a connection that went beyond words. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms. Then Enzo pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "Elara," he said, his voice hoarse. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." "What is it?" she asked, her heart pounding in her chest. "Your father," he said. "The night he died, he asked me to find you. He asked me to protect you, to keep you safe from the life he had left behind." "He asked you?" She stepped back, confusion clouding her features. "But you said Luca was the one who made the promise." "I lied," Enzo admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "Luca never knew your father. He never made any promises to him. I did." "Why?" she demanded. "Why would you lie about something like that?" "Because I didn't want you to know," he said. "I didn't want you to feel obligated to me. I wanted you to choose this, to choose us, because you wanted to. Not because of some promise your father made me make." She stared at him, a storm of emotions swirling inside her. Anger, confusion, betrayal. But beneath it all, something else. Something that felt dangerously like understanding. "Your father asked you to protect me," she repeated slowly. "Why? He didn't even know me." "He knew about you," Enzo said. "He talked about you all the time. His daughter, the light of his life. He wanted you to have a better future, a future free from the darkness of this world." "And you agreed to help him?" she asked. "After everything you've done, everything you've been forced to become, you agreed to help him?" "Yes," he said simply. "Because I saw something in him that I recognized. A man who was trying to escape the life he had been born into. A man who wanted better for the people he loved." She looked at him, and she saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't lying, not this time. The promise he had made to her father had been real as the connection that had grown between them. "All this time," she said softly. "All this time, you've been protecting me. Not because of Luca, but because of my father." "Yes," he said. "But it's not the only reason, Elara. I kept protecting you because I wanted to. Because I needed to. Because somewhere along the way, you became more than a promise to me." She took a step closer to him, her eyes never leaving his. "What did I become?" she asked. "You became everything," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You became the reason I want to be better. The reason I want to survive. The reason I believe there's something worth fighting for." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the lines of his jaw. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch, and she felt something shift inside her. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared of what comes next. I'm scared of losing you." "You won't lose me," he said, opening his eyes. "I'll never leave you, Elara. I'll never let anyone take you from me. Promise me," she said. "Promise me that we'll find a way through this. Together." "I promise," he said. "I promise you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her close, and she felt the tension in her body slowly ease. They spent the rest of the night talking, sharing stories and secrets that had never been told. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The wind howled outside, but inside, there was only warmth and light and the growing connection between them. When dawn broke, Elara was still in his arms. She had fallen asleep on the sofa, her head resting on his chest, her hand clutching his shirt like a lifeline. He had stayed awake, watching over her, his fingers gently stroking her hair. "Good morning," she murmured, stirring in his embrace. "Good morning," he replied, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in weeks," she admitted. "I feel safe with you, Enzo. I don't know why, but I do. Because I'll never let anything happen to you," he said. "I'll protect you with my life, Elara. I swear it." She smiled, a small, tentative smile that made his heart ache. "I know you will." They rose and ate a simple breakfast of bread and cheese, sitting at the small kitchen table that looked out over the valley. The mountains rose around them, their peaks dusted with snow, their slopes covered in a patchwork of green and brown. "It's beautiful here," Elara said, her eyes sweeping across the landscape. "I never knew places like this existed." "I found it years ago," Enzo said. "When I needed to escape, I came here. It was the only place I could breathe." "Then it's special," she said. "It's a place that holds your secrets." "Yes," he agreed. "And now it holds yours too." The morning passed in a haze of quiet conversation and shared silence. They talked about everything and nothing, about the future they wanted and the past they were leaving behind. It was a fragile peace, a moment of calm in the storm that was surely coming. But the storm did come, as they knew it would. It was late afternoon when Enzo's phone rang. He answered it, his face going pale as he listened to the voice on the other end. When he hung up, his eyes were filled with a darkness that made Elara's blood run cold. "It's my father," he said. "He knows where we are. He's coming." "How?" she demanded. "How could he know?" "I don't know," Enzo said, already moving toward the door. "But we have to go. We have to leave now." They grabbed what they could and ran to the car. The engine roared to life, and they sped away from the cottage just as headlights appeared on the road above. "He found us," Enzo muttered, his hands gripping the steering wheel. "He found us." "Then let's not make it easy for him," Elara said, her voice steady despite the fear that was coursing through her. Enzo nodded, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. They drove faster, taking curves at speeds that would have been suicidal in daylight. But the headlights behind them never wavered. They were being hunted. The road wound downward into a valley, and Enzo took a sharp turn that led them onto a narrow track. The car bounced over rocks and ruts, the suspension groaning under the strain. "Hold on," he said, and Elara grabbed the door handle as the car plunged into a dense forest. The trees closed in around them, their branches scraping against the windows. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating a path that seemed to have no end. And behind them, the sound of engines grew louder. "They're gaining on us," Elara said, her voice tight with fear. "I know," Enzo said. "I know." The track ended abruptly at a cliff's edge. Enzo slammed on the brakes, and the car skidded to a stop inches from the drop. Below them, a river churned and foamed, its waters dark and treacherous. "We're trapped," Elara whispered. "No," Enzo said, his voice filled with a strange calm. We're not trapped. We're exactly where we need to be. He opened his door and got out, motioning for her to do the same. She followed him, her heart pounding in her chest. The headlights of the pursuing cars were growing closer, their engines roaring in the night. "Follow me," Enzo said, grabbing her hand. "Trust me." They ran along the edge of the cliff, the ground treacherous beneath their feet. Below them, the river rushed and roared, a deadly current that would sweep them away if they fell. The other cars arrived, their headlights illuminating the scene. Men poured out, their faces hard and unforgiving. At their head, a figure that made Alara's blood run cold. Don Moretti. He was tall and imposing, his silver hair swept back from a face that had seen too much violence. His eyes were cold, calculating, the eyes of a man who had destroyed countless lives without a second thought. "Enzo," he called out, his voice carrying across the distance. "Come back. It doesn't have to be this way." "It's too late for that, Father," Enzo shouted back. "You've made your choice. Now I'm making mine." "Don't be foolish," Don Moretti said, taking a step forward. "You can't escape me. You never could. Come back, and I'll be merciful." "I don't want your mercy," Enzo said. "I want freedom. And I'll die before I let you take it from me." The men moved forward, their weapons glinting in the moonlight. Enzo pulled Alara closer, his arm wrapped protectively around her. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "don't let go of my hand." "I won't," she promised. "I'm right here." The men advanced, their footsteps like thunder in the night. Enzo backed toward the cliff's edge, his eyes scanning the darkness for an escape. "Enzo," his father called out. "Think of what you're doing. Think of your family. Think of your legacy." "I have thought about it," Enzo said. "And I've decided that your legacy is not worth continuing. I want no part of it." "Then you leave me no choice." Don Moretti raised his hand, a signal to his men. They moved forward, their weapons raised. And in that moment, everything changed. The ground beneath them gave way. Alara felt herself falling, the world spinning around her. Enzo's hand was still clutched in hers, his fingers like iron. Together they tumbled down the cliffside, rocks and dirt raining down around them. The river rushed up to meet them, cold and dark and hungry. Alara hit the water with a force that knocked the breath from her lungs. The current grabbed her, pulling her under, and she fought against it with all her strength. But she wasn't alone. Enzo was there, his hand still clasped in hers, pulling her toward the surface. Together they broke through, gasping for air, and fought against the current toward the shore. They made it to a narrow bank, their bodies battered and bruised. Alara collapsed on the stones, her chest heaving, her eyes closed against the darkness. "We made it," she whispered. "We actually made it." "Yes," Enzo said, his voice shaking. "We made it." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. She could feel his heart pounding against her chest, and she knew that they had come close to losing each other. "They'll be looking for us," she said, her voice steadier now. "They won't give up." "I know," he said. "But we have a head start. We can make it to the village before they find us." He helped her to her feet, and they began to walk. The terrain was rough, the darkness absolute. But they had each other, and that was enough. They walked through the night, following the river until it widened into a lake. On the far shore, lights flickered in the windows of a small village. "We're almost there," Enzo said, his voice filled with exhaustion. "We can find a boat, cross the lake. Then we'll be safe." They found a small fishing boat tied to a dock, and Enzo rowed them across the dark water. The village grew closer with each stroke, its lights a beacon of hope in the darkness. They reached the shore and stumbled onto the dock, collapsing in a heap. They had made it. They had escaped. But the danger was not over. Alara was in the kitchen of a small inn, warming her hands by the fire, when she heard the sound of boots on the stairs. Enzo was in the next room, resting, and her heart leaped into her throat. She reached for a knife on the counter, her fingers wrapping around the handle. The footsteps grew closer, and she braced herself for the attack. But it wasn't Don Moretti who burst through the door. It was Luca. He looked different, older and harder, the gentle man she had once loved replaced by something darker. His eyes were wild, his clothes disheveled, and there was a desperation in his movements that made her want to run. "Ilara," he said, his voice ragged. "I've been looking for you." "Stay back," she warned, brandishing the knife. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "You don't understand," he said, taking a step closer. "I came to warn you. Our father knows you're here. He's coming." "I don't believe you," she said. "You're working with him. You're trying to trap us." "I'm not," he insisted. "I swear it. I came to help you. To help Enzo. Whatever you think of me, I'm not your enemy." She studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. But all she saw was desperation and something that looked almost like sincerity. "Why should I believe you?" she demanded. "You lied to me from the beginning. You used me for your own purposes. Why would I ever trust you again?" "Because I love you," he said. "I've always loved you. I know I made mistakes, I know I hurt you, but I never stopped loving you." "Love," she repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. "You don't know what love is, Luca. You never did." "I know what I feel," he said, moving closer. "And I know that I've been a fool. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I should have been honest with you." "Yes, you should have," she said, her voice hard. "But you weren't. And now it's too late." "Too late." He looked at her, confusion in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've moved on," she said, the words cutting through the air between them. "I've moved on from you, from the lies, from the betrayal. You don't get to come back and pretend that everything is the same." "But Ilara." "Don't," she said, holding up the knife. "Don't say my name like you have the right to it. You lost that right the night you lied to me." He stared at her, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. Then his expression hardened, and she saw a flash of anger in his eyes. "This is about him, isn't it?" he demanded. "This is about Enzo. You've fallen for him." "I've fallen for the man he is," she said. "The man I thought you were. The man you pretended to be." "I could be that man," he said, his voice pleading. "I can still be that man, Ilara. Just give me a chance." "No," she said, her voice final. "I gave you a chance, and you threw it away. I'm not making the same mistake twice." The door burst open, and Enzo stood there, his face pale, his eyes blazing. He took in the scene in an instant and moved to stand between Ilara and his brother. "Get away from her," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Enzo, listen to me," Luca began. "No, you listen," Enzo said, stepping forward. "You've done enough damage. You've hurt her enough. I won't let you hurt her anymore." "I'm not trying to hurt her," Luca insisted. "I'm trying to help her. I came to warn you both. Our father is on his way. He knows you're here." "How?" Enzo demanded. "How could he know?" "I told him," Luca admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. "I thought if I helped him find you, he would show me mercy. But he lied. He's going to kill all of us." "You fool," Enzo spat. "You absolute fool. You've destroyed everything. Don't you think I know that?" Luca shouted. "Don't you think I've been living with the guilt? I made a terrible mistake, and I'm trying to fix it." "There's no fixing this," Enzo said. "You've made your choice. Now you have to live with it." The three of them stood there, locked in a triangle of anger and pain. Then the sound of engines echoed in the distance, and they knew that their time had run out. Get her out of here, Luca said, his voice suddenly calm. I'll hold them off. Luca, Enzo began. Just go, Luca said. Take her and go. I'll buy you time. They ran, leaving Luca behind. The engines grew louder, and Elara could hear the shouts of men as they converged on the inn. They ran through the village, their feet pounding on the cobblestones. The night air was cold, the darkness absolute. But they didn't stop. They couldn't stop. We can't outrun them, Elara gasped. There are too many. I know, Enzo said. But we have to try. They reached the edge of the village and plunged into the forest. The trees closed in around them, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers. The sounds of pursuit grew closer, and Elara knew that they were running out of time. Enzo, she said, pulling him to a stop. I need to tell you something. Not now, he said. We have to keep moving. Yes, now, she insisted. I need you to know that no matter what happens, I don't regret a single moment. Everything we've shared, every moment we've had, it's been worth it. He looked at her, his eyes shining in the darkness. I feel the same way, he said. I've never felt this way about anyone. And if I don't survive tonight, I want you to know that you made my life worth living. You will survive, she said fiercely. We both will. I won't let you give up. I won't, he promised. I'll fight until my last breath. They continued through the forest, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter behind them. They had lost their pursuers, at least for now. They found a small cave, hidden behind a waterfall, and took shelter there. The sound of the water was deafening, but it also provided cover, masking any sound they might make. We'll wait here until dawn, Enzo said, his voice barely audible over the roar of the water. Then we'll find a way out. Do you think we'll make it? Elara asked, her voice small. I don't know, he admitted. But I'm not going to give up. I'll never give up, not as long as you're with me. She moved closer to him, and he wrapped his arms around her. They sat there in the darkness, the sound of the waterfall surrounding them, and for a moment, everything else faded away. In that cave, hidden from the world, they found a moment of peace. They found each other. And they found the strength to keep fighting. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the waterfall, Elara looked at Enzo and knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. I love you, she said, the words surprising even her. I never thought I would say those words again, but I love you, Enzo. He looked at her, and she saw tears in his eyes. I love you too, he said. I've loved you from the moment I saw you in the garden. Even when you were being cruel, she asked, a ghost of a smile on her lips. Especially then, he admitted. I was terrified of how I felt. I didn't know how to handle it. And now, she asked. Now I know that I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe, he said. I'll fight the whole world if I have to. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his, their breath mingling in the cold air. Together, she said. We face it together. Together, he agreed. They emerged from the cave as the sun rose over the mountains, its golden light painting the world in shades of hope. The sounds of pursuit had faded, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, they dared to believe that they might actually survive. They walked through the forest, following the path that led toward the border. The terrain was rough, but they pushed forward, their determination fueled by their love for each other. As they reached the edge of the forest, they saw a small village below them. It was a place they had never been, a place where they could start over, a place where no one knew their names. We can make it, Enzo said, his voice filled with a new resolve. We can make it, and we can build a new life together. Yes, Elara agreed. We can. They descended toward the village, their hands clasped together. The sun rose higher, its warmth washing over them, and for the first time in a long time, they felt hope. But the road ahead was uncertain, filled with danger and obstacles that neither of them could predict. They had escaped their pursuers, but the shadow of Don Moretti still loomed over them. "Enzo," Elara said, stopping at the edge of the village. "Whatever happens, I need you to promise me something." "What?" he asked, turning to face her. "Promise me that you'll never stop fighting," she said. "Promise me that no matter what happens, you'll never give up." "I promise," he said. "As long as you promise the same." "I promise," she said. They walked into the village, their future unknown but their spirits unbroken. They had faced the darkness and survived. They had faced their enemies and emerged stronger. And as they stood together in the morning light, they knew that nothing would ever tear them apart. The village of San Martino lay nestled in a fold of the mountains, a collection of ancient stone buildings clustered around a central piazza where a fountain whispered its eternal song. It was the kind of place that time seemed to have forgotten, where the rhythms of life followed the rising and setting of the sun, where strangers were viewed with suspicion but also with a deep and abiding curiosity. Elara and Enzo had been there for 3 weeks, their presence slowly becoming accepted by the wary locals. They had taken a small apartment above a bakery, the scent of fresh bread their daily alarm clock, the sounds of the village their constant companion. It was a simple life, a far cry from the opulence of the Villa Rossetti, but it was theirs. And it was enough. Elara stood at the window of their apartment, watching the morning light paint the rooftops in shades of gold and amber. The world below was waking, the shopkeepers opening their doors, the children running to school, the old men gathering at the fountain to discuss the events of the day. It was a peaceful scene, the kind of peace she had never thought she would find. Behind her, she heard the soft rustle of sheets as Enzo stirred in their bed. He had been restless again last night, the nightmares that plagued him refusing to release their hold. She had held him through the darkness, whispering words of comfort, reminding him that he was safe, that the past could not reach them here. "Good morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "You're up early." "I couldn't sleep," she admitted, turning to face him. "I was thinking about everything that's happened. Everything we've been through." "Don't think about it," he said, rising from the bed and crossing to her. "The past is behind us. All that matters is now." "But the past is what made us who we are," she said softly. "It's what brought us together. I can't forget it, even if I want to." He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. She could feel the steady beat of his heart against her back, a rhythm that had become her anchor in the storm of her life. "I know," he said. "I can't forget it either. But I can choose to focus on the future. On the life we're building together." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. His face was still lined with the remnants of his nightmares, but there was a peace in his eyes that hadn't been there before. A peace that she had helped to create. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now. "I never thought I would say that to anyone again, but I love you, Enzo." "I love you too," he said, pressing his forehead to hers. "More than I ever thought I could love anyone." They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other's embrace. Then the sound of footsteps on the stairs broke the spell, and they pulled apart. "It's the baker," Enzo said, a small smile playing on his lips. "He always brings fresh bread in the morning." "Then let's not keep him waiting," Elara said, returning his smile. The baker was a round, jolly man named Giuseppe, whose wife had died years ago and whose children had moved to the city. He had taken the young couple under his wing, treating them like the children he had never had. His fresh bread was the highlight of their day, a simple pleasure that felt like a luxury. "Buongiorno, signori," Giuseppe called out as they descended the stairs. "I have brought you something special today. My grandmother's recipe for panettone. You must try it." "Thank you, Giuseppe," Elara said, taking the warm bread from his hands. "You're too kind to us." "Nonsense," he said, waving away her gratitude. "You are part of our village now. You are family. And family takes care of each other." As he left, Elara and Enzo sat at the small table by the window, breaking bread together. It was a simple ritual, but it had become sacred to them, a reminder of the life they were building. "We need to talk," Enzo said, his voice serious. "About what comes next." "I know," she said, setting down her bread. "We can't hide forever. Eventually, we'll have to face the world again." "But not yet," he said. "We're not ready yet. We need more time." "Time to heal," she agreed. "Time to figure out who we want to be." They had been through so much together, had faced so many dangers. The shadow of Don Moretti still hung over them, a constant reminder that their peace was fragile, that the past could reach out and drag them back at any moment. But they had each other. And that was enough. The days passed in a gentle rhythm, each one bringing them closer together. They explored the village, walking its narrow streets and discovering its hidden corners. They helped Giuseppe in his bakery, learning the art of bread making. They sat by the fountain in the piazza, watching the world go by. And slowly, the wounds of the past began to heal. Elara found herself thinking less about her father's lies, less about Luca's betrayal. The pain was still there, a dull ache in her heart, but it no longer consumed her. She was learning to let go, to embrace the present instead of living in the past. Enzo, too, was changing. The hardness that had defined him was softening, replaced by a gentleness that surprised them both. He smiled more often, laughed more freely. The nightmares still came, but they were less frequent, less intense. One evening, as they sat on the roof of their apartment, watching the stars emerge one by one, Elara turned to Enzo and asked the question that had been on her mind for weeks. "What do you want for the future?" she asked. "What do you want our life to look like?" He was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the heavens. "I want peace," he said at last. "I want a life where we don't have to look over our shoulders. I want a life where we can be ourselves, without fear." "And what about children?" she asked softly. "Do you want a family?" He turned to look at her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Hope, she realized. A fragile, tentative hope that she had put there. "I never thought I could have that," he admitted. "I never thought I could be a father, not after everything I've done. But with you, I think I could. I think I could be the man you deserve." "You already are," she said, reaching out to take his hand. "You're exactly the man I deserve." He pulled her close, and they sat there in the darkness, wrapped in each other's arms. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and eternal, and for a moment, everything was perfect. But the past was not done with them yet. It was a gray morning, the sky heavy with rain, when the stranger arrived in the village. He was tall and thin, with eyes that seemed to see everything and reveal nothing. He moved through the piazza with an air of purpose, his gaze sweeping across the buildings until it settled on the bakery. Elara saw him from the window, and her blood ran cold. She knew that walk, that posture. She had seen it before, in the corridors of the Villa Rossetti, in the eyes of men who served Don Moretti. "Enzo," she called out, her voice tight with fear. "Enzo, come here." He was at her side in an instant, his eyes following her gaze. When he saw the stranger, his face went pale. "Stay here," he said, his voice hard. "Don't come out, no matter what you hear." "Enzo, wait," she began, but he was already moving toward the door. She watched from the window as he descended the stairs and stepped into the piazza. The stranger turned to face him, a cold smile playing on his lips. "Enzo Moretti," the stranger said, his voice carrying across the square. "It's been a long time. What do you want?" Enzo demanded, his hands clenched at his sides. "Your father wants to see you," the stranger said. "He's willing to negotiate. He's willing to give you what you want." "Lies," Enzo spat. "Everything that comes out of his mouth is a lie. This time, it's not." The stranger reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "He sent me with this. Read it. Then decide." He tossed the envelope at Enzo's feet and walked away, disappearing into the narrow streets of the village. Enzo stood there for a long moment, staring at the envelope as if it were a viper. Then he bent down and picked it up. "What does it say?" Elara asked, appearing at his side. She had ignored his instruction, unable to stay hidden while he faced danger alone. "I don't know," he said, his voice hollow. "I haven't opened it yet." "Then open it," she said. "We faced this together, remember?" He nodded, his fingers trembling as he tore open the envelope. He pulled out a letter, his eyes scanning the words. As he read, his face went pale, then flushed with anger. "He's offering me a deal," Enzo said, his voice shaking. "He says he'll let us go, let us live in peace, if I give him the ledger." "But you don't have the ledger," Elara said. "Luca took it." "I know." Enzo crumpled the letter in his fist. "But I know where Luca is. I know how to find the ledger." "And what are you going to do?" she asked, her heart pounding in her chest. "I don't know," he admitted. "I don't know what to do." They stood there in the piazza, the rain beginning to fall around them. The villagers had retreated to their homes, sensing the danger that had come to their peaceful community. "We have to go back," Elara said, her voice steady. "We have to confront him. We can't run forever." "Elara," Enzo began. "I'm not afraid," she said, cutting him off. "I'm not afraid of your father. I'm not afraid of any of them. Because I have you, and you have me, and together we can face anything." He looked at her, and she saw the fear in his eyes slowly give way to something else. Determination, she realized. A fierce, unshakable determination that matched her own. "Then we go back," he said. "We go back, and we end this. Once and for all." They left the village that night, leaving behind the peace they had found. Giuseppe wept as they said goodbye, pressing loaves of bread into their hands and making them promise to return. "This is your home now," he said. "You will always be welcome here." "We'll come back," Enzo promised. "When this is over, we'll come back." They drove through the night, the road winding through the mountains toward the city. Elara sat in the passenger seat, her eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. She was not afraid. She had faced too much to be afraid anymore. The Villa Rossetti rose before them as dawn broke, its ancient stones gleaming in the morning light. It looked the same as it had on the night she had first arrived, a fortress of secrets and lies. But she was not the same woman who had walked through its gates. That woman had been naive, trusting, easily manipulated. This woman was forged in fire, tempered by pain, strengthened by love. "You don't have to do this," Enzo said, pulling the car to a stop at the gates. "You can stay here. I'll go in alone." "No," she said, her voice firm. "We do this together." They walked through the gates, their footsteps echoing on the ancient stones. The garden was the same, the fountain still singing its eternal song. But everything else had changed. Don Moretti was waiting for them in the main hall, surrounded by his men. He looked older than she remembered, his face lined with the weight of his choices. "Enzo," he said, his voice surprisingly soft. "You came back." "I came back to end this," Enzo said, his voice hard. "I came back to tell you that I'm done. I'm done being your weapon, done being your puppet. I'm done with all of it." "And what about the ledger?" Don Moretti asked, his eyes narrowing. "What about all the secrets you hold?" "The ledger is gone," Enzo said. "Luca took it. I don't know where it is, and I don't care. I don't want anything to do with your empire. You think you can just walk away?" Don Moretti laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the hall. "You think you can leave this life behind and live in peace? It doesn't work that way, Enzo. Once you're in forever." "Not anymore," Elara said, stepping forward. "You've controlled him long enough. You've taken enough from him. It's time to let him go." Don Moretti turned to look at her, his eyes cold. And who are you to tell me what to do? I'm the woman who loves him, she said, her voice steady. I'm the woman who will fight for him, no matter what it takes. And I'm telling you that you're not going to hurt him anymore. Loyalty, Don Moretti said, a hint of admiration in his voice. I didn't think you had it in you. I have more than you know, she said. And I'm not afraid of you. The men in the room shifted, their hands moving toward their weapons. Enzo moved in front of Elara, shielding her with his body. Don't, Enzo warned. Don't even think about it. Don Moretti raised his hand, and his men stopped. He studied Enzo and Elara for a long moment, his expression unreadable. You have something I never had, Don Moretti said at last. You have love. Real love. I thought it was a weakness, but I see now that I was wrong. It's a strength. A strength I never understood. Then let us go, Enzo said. Let us go, and I'll never trouble you again. Even if I let you go, there will always be others, Don Moretti said. Others who want what I have. Others who will come for you, for her, for everything you hold dear. You can never truly escape. Then we'll face them together, Enzo said. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Don Moretti was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded, a small, almost imperceptible gesture. Go, he said. Take your love and go. But remember this, Enzo. I am letting you go because I choose to. Not because you beat me. Not because you earned it. Because I am giving you a gift. Don't waste it. Enzo took Elara's hand and led her out of the hall, out of the villa, out of the life that had held him captive for so long. They walked through the garden, past the fountain where it had all begun, and out through the gates. They drove away from the Villa Rossetti, leaving behind the ghosts of the past. The road stretched before them, leading toward an unknown future. But they were not afraid. They had each other, and that was all they needed. The drive back to San Martino was long, but they didn't mind. They talked about their dreams, their hopes, the life they wanted to build together. The weight that had been pressing down on Enzo's shoulders seemed to lift, and Elara could see the man he was becoming, free, open, unburdened by the chains of his past. Giuseppe welcomed them back with tears of joy, embracing them as if they were his own children. The village welcomed them back too, accepting them as part of its fabric. And slowly, peace settled over them like a gentle blanket. Weeks turned into months. The seasons changed, the mountains cloaking themselves in snow, then emerging in green and gold. Elara and Enzo built a life together, a simple life of small joys and quiet moments. They opened a small cafe in the piazza, serving Giuseppe's bread and their own coffee. The villagers flocked to it, drawn by the warmth and the laughter that filled its walls. It became a gathering place, a heart of the community. And in the evenings, when the last customers had left and the sun was setting over the mountains, Enzo and Elara would sit on their roof and watch the stars emerge. We made it, Elara said one night, her voice filled with wonder. We actually made it. Yes, Enzo agreed, pulling her close. We made it. And we're never going back. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. They had faced their enemies and found their strength. They had faced their fears and discovered their courage. And in the end, they had found each other. The future stretched before them, uncertain and full of possibility. But they were ready for it. They were ready for anything, as long as they faced it together. The final piece of their past fell away one spring morning, when a letter arrived from the city. Enzo opened it with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the words. It's from Luca, he said, his voice strange. He's gone. He's left the country. He says he's starting a new life somewhere far away. And the ledger? Elara asked. He took it with him, Enzo said. He says it's his insurance. His guarantee that our father will leave him alone. So it's over, Elara said softly. It's finally over. Yes, Enzo said, a smile spreading across his face. It's over. We're free. They stood there in the morning light, wrapped in each other's arms. The past was behind them, a closed chapter in their lives. The future was ahead, waiting to be written. And they would write it together. In the years that followed, Elara and Enzo built a life that exceeded their wildest dreams. They had children, a boy and a girl, who grew up surrounded by love and laughter. They raised them in the village, teaching them the values of kindness and courage that had sustained their parents through the darkest times. The cafe grew, becoming a beloved institution in the village. People came from far and wide to taste Giuseppe's bread and the warmth of the young couple who ran it. It was a place of connection, of community, of healing. And through it all, Enzo and Elara remained each other's anchor. They faced every challenge together, celebrated every joy together, mourned every loss together. Their love was a constant, a steady flame that burned bright even in the darkest nights. As they grew older, their love only deepened. They had been through so much together, had faced so many trials. But they had come out the other side stronger, more connected, more in love than ever before. On their 50th anniversary, the village threw them a celebration. The piazza was filled with flowers and lanterns, music and laughter. People came from all over to honor the couple who had become the heart of their community. Enzo stood before the crowd, Elara at his side. They were old now, their hair silver, their faces lined with the passage of time. But their eyes were still bright, their love still fierce. 50 years, Enzo said, his voice carrying across the piazza. 50 years since I met the woman who changed everything. 50 years since I learned what it means to love and be loved. He turned to Elara, his eyes shining with tears. I was lost before I met you, he said. I was a monster, a shadow, a man who had forgotten what it meant to be human. You found me in the darkness and brought me into the light. You saved me, Elara. You saved me, and you made me into the man I am today. You saved me too, she said, her voice soft. You showed me that love was possible, even after everything I had been through. You showed me that I could be happy, that I could trust, that I could love again. You gave me a life I never thought I would have. The crowd cheered, their applause echoing through the piazza. Enzo pulled Elara into his arms, holding her close. I love you, he whispered in her ear. I will love you until the end of time, and beyond. I love you too, she whispered back. Forever and always. And so their story ended, not with a dramatic finale, but with a quiet peace. They had faced the darkness and emerged into the light. They had found love in the most unexpected place, and they had held on to it with all their strength. Their love story was one of redemption, of healing, of a forever that had been forged in the fires of adversity. It was a testament to the power of love, the strength of the human spirit, and the unbreakable bond that two people can share when they are willing to fight for each other. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Elara and Enzo stood together, their hands clasped, their hearts full. They had come so far, had overcome so much. And now, they had everything they had ever wanted. They had each other. And that was enough. If you enjoyed this story of love, redemption, and the triumph of the human spirit, please like and subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world to me and helps me continue to create stories that touch the heart and inspire the soul. Until next time, remember that love is always worth fighting for, and that even in the darkest moments, hope can be found. Thank you for reading.